You've already seen the thumbnail, you know what it is. So without further ado, let's get started. The biggest fish in the world is the whale shark, which eats plankton. The second biggest fish is the basking shark, which also eats plankton, so they're not really something that you would fish for unless maybe you were going to tie a plankton fly or something like that. Anyway, the third largest fish in the world is something that you could actually tempt with a lure, and that would be the great white shark. Of course, people used to fish for these things, but now they are protected species. I don't know if there's maybe an exception for scientific purposes, but this is a lure making channel, so it's got to have hooks. However, I'm making this one with removable hooks, so it could be used as a decoy for photography, like you see on TV with the sharks leaping out of the water as they attack from below. Now let's consider what we're designing for. Females are generally bigger and can reach lengths of 20 feet and weigh in at 5,000 pounds. That's a lot of fish. I am modeling my lure after the South African fur seal because this is the bait that is currently used to photograph sharks breaching, which would likely be the primary use of this lure. Seal pups are about 26 inches in length, and I'm going to have a single joint in the middle to hopefully give this thing a little bit more action. So let's take a look at what I've sketched out here. I've got a top view and a side view, and I'm going to be starting with a very large block of cedar, and I think what I'm going to need to do is buy some 4x4 posts and glue them up. So that should give me about a 7-inch square piece, and then I'm going to cut them 24 inches long to start with. So ultimately this whole piece right here is all going to be made out of cedar. Then I'm going to use a flexible material for the flippers. I'm thinking maybe rubber or foam rubber or something like that that's durable and maybe replaceable. But as you can see here on the side flippers, I'm going to angle those up a little bit. And so by angling those up a little bit, it should keep it on top and prevent it from diving. And also you can see here, I'm going to put a joint just past those front flippers. And I'm doing that just to give it a little bit more motion, a little bit more realistic appearance. And so here's where the cut is, and this is where it winds up in the middle of the lure. And I'm going to have 2 attachment points or 2 pivot points in there for it to move on. I'm also going to put the line tine right here, which is in the center line of the lure, and 2 hook points, pretty similar to what you would do on a smaller lure. Just for good measure, I think I'm going to add a lip here on the lure, and it's going to need to be really heavy duty. I'm thinking it's going to be 1/2-inch polycarbonate. It doesn't need to be huge, and I want it to be vertical because, again, I'm trying to keep it from diving. So a vertical lip should just give it enough turbulence to kind of give it a side-to-side motion, hopefully. Alright, so basically what I've done so far is I've taken my rough cedar and I've planed 2 adjacent sides of each of these boards. And what that'll allow me to do is glue these up with a nice tight fitting joint, and I'll have one giant block of cedar to start carving on. What I'm going to use is this waterproof wood glue. I found that it works pretty good, and I don't really have enough clamps, I don't think, to do it all at once, so I may have to do it in stages. Alright, now that we've got our 2 halves glued, I did run it through the planer again to smooth up that one side that we're going to be joining together. We're just going to glue these up just like we did the others. there's better tools for this job. I don't typically work with large timber stuff, so I don't really have all the right tools for this job, and it didn't really make sense for me to spend all that money just to make one lure. So I'm just working with what I got. It'll be a little bit slower, but I will eventually get there. Well, I've still got some flat sides here to work with. I'm going to go ahead and cut the joint here. I've decided I'm going to go with a 30-degree angle, and so I've transcribed that onto our carving here. And then I'm going to get the table saw set up here, and we'll go ahead and make those cuts. In my excitement to get started, I forgot to cut the lip slot, which I should have done when this whole thing was square. It would have been a lot easier, but I didn't. Which just means this is going to be more difficult, and I'm going to have to take more time setting up to get it done right. You can see here where I had a knot or a tree limb coming out of this board, and it's got a pretty good hole in it. What I'm going to use is some of this wood glue and some sawdust that I've saved from my carving, and I'm just going to kind of mix that together and make a filler. We'll let that set up, and I'll sand it, and if I need to, I'll just skim over it with some wood putty. lot of thin pieces on it, and because of the heavy grain of the wood, it's trying to split on me. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of this really thin Instacure on there to stabilize the wood just there at the ear. I'm going to start thinking about fins here. Flippers. So this rubber mat material that I've chosen for these flippers has a pebbled kind of texture on one side, which I kind of like. I'll probably just leave that on one side, but the other side has these straight ribs on them, and that's not going to work out too great for me. So I'm going to put these on the belt sander over there. This is one I've already done, and as you can see, you can sand away all those ridges, and it's actually surprisingly carvable. So I smooth that out, and then I'm kind of rounding the edges a little bit just so that they're not quite so sharp looking. And I think then once I do that, I'll probably carve some detail into these flippers here just to make them a little more realistic. you can see, I've got the flippers all installed. They're not really permanently in there, they're just sort of wedged in for the time being. I kind of wanted to give you a look at this before we move on to installing the hardware in the belly. So it took me quite a while to come up with a solution for how I'm going to connect the front piece to the back piece and also have my toe point and my hook points on there. I looked at several materials. I looked at braided wire. Braided wire is kind of hard to do good connections. It can be done, but my biggest concern with braided wire was water intruding in the braid. You know, if water can seep in between the strands of braid, it can get into the wood, and I don't want any water intrusion problems, so I kind of ruled braided wire out. My other option would be to fabricate something out of metal, like steel rod, and that requires cutting and bending, which I've done before. I just don't have those tools in this shop. So I wanted to get something that was a little bit more off the shelf, ready to go. And so the obvious solution to me was chain. This chain has a working load of 1,000 pounds. Let's take a look at my drawing and I'll show you what I'm thinking here. I'm going to have two connection points here for the pivot at the joint. And so on the top here, I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll get maybe about a foot piece of chain to connect the front and the back. And then along the bottom, I'm thinking more of a through wire type system where I've got this single piece of chain that connects the toe point and the two hook hangers, and it also serves as the joint. So I can kind of knock out several birds with one stone by doing it that way. Let's go ahead and mark the bottom too while we're at it. Alright, obviously I got my channel cut on the top and the bottom. See how the chain fits very nicely. So I think it's time to make this, finish this cut, free the two pieces, and then we can start embedding the chain and epoxying that into place. Sweet. It's a pretty cool cross section. You can see where the chains are going to go. What I'm thinking here is that I'm going to tack these critical pieces, these loops, I think using Instacure and baking soda, so that those are kind of solidly put where I want them. And then I'm going to use epoxy to hold the rest of the chain in. What I'm wanting to do is pour some epoxy to flow in and around the chain area. I don't want to fill it all the way to the brim, but I want to put some epoxy where the chain is. Ordinarily, I would use this 30-minute epoxy to set that chain in place, but I don't actually have all that much of it. What I do have a lot of is this East Coast resin, and It's kind of starting to turn yellow on me, so I'm going to go ahead and use it up on this because I know I'll have plenty of it to complete the job. Boom. Maxed our scale out. So my thinking here is that this will make a little bit of a dam. I'm still going to have a air pocket around my chain, but this will make a watertight dam that I can sand down. And then I can get inside this hole here and fill it the rest of the way with epoxy. I'm trying to find the ideal method for embedding this chain inside this lure. So far I've tried a couple of different things. The first one was to make little end dams and then just fill it with epoxy. That was kind of messy. I did get the job done, but it wasn't ideal. And then here on the other side, we're trying this method where we build in a dam with a piece of wood and then we'll fill it. I think that's going to work pretty nice. I think it's going to give it a cleaner look. I'm going to try a third thing on this last bit of chain right here. I've got to have this chain just so. This link right here has got to be held into place pretty accurately so that I have that perfect movement, and then this one's going to have to be held into place pretty accurately so that I'll have a hook hanger. So I've got an idea about how to do that, and hopefully it'll make sense to you as I go along here. But whenever you're doing something new like this, it's all about experimentation. You'll find better ways to get the job done. There's probably a dozen ways to do this, but don't be afraid to try new things and to adapt, because that's how you learn. That's how you get better at doing things. I'm going to try this next one. I think it's got pretty good potential, but at least we're closing in on a solution here. We'll get this thing done sooner or later. last little bit of chain here, if I can get that filled with epoxy, then the chain will be locked in. But in order to get in there, I'm going to have to make a little funnel here. Here's one of the shark hooks I was able to find for this lure. I got 2 of them, and these are pretty good size, but I'm going to have to modify this to work for what we need. You'll notice that on this one the eye is oriented like a typical hook, but for lures what we need is an inline eye, which looks like that. So basically we need to rotate the eye 90 degrees so that when we put it on the lure, it is oriented correctly to the body. Just trying to get a general layout for the fur pattern and the direction that the fur is going, just so that I make sure that it's all symmetrical as I go along here. As you can see, the wood burning did add a lot of darkness to this wood, but there's still some light parts in there, and I don't want it to be jet black, but I do want to darken it some, so I'm going to apply a stain to this. The problem with using a lot of paint is the paint will fill in my wood burning detail. I don't really want to do that, but a stain will soak in and it will maintain that detail on top. What I've got here in the shop is a dark walnut. So you can see it's just a really dark brown color, and I think that'll be perfect for this particular lure. I may wind up having to do a little bit of touch up here where we've got putty if it doesn't take the stain exactly the same as the wood, which it probably will not. But I can do a little bit of touch up paint. I just don't want to do a ton of paint on this thing because I don't want to lose my detail. Transparent black. I'm gonna take it real easy with that, but I'm gonna try and blend that in with the rest as best I can. Okay, I'm looking at some reference pictures here, and it looks like that particularly in young seals, there's a little patch of skin kind of around the eye areas and maybe even along the nose a little bit. And so this is what I've whipped up. Just kind of kind of a dark flesh color, and this is a mixture of opaque white, a little bit of light brown, and then just a couple of drops of detail raw umber mixed together. Not sure if this is going to be exactly the right tone, but we're going to try it. Now we're going to use a little bit of light brown here and there just to give it a little bit more depth. I'm also going to come in and paint just a little bit in the ear here. And now I'm going to come in with the brush and I'm going to use opaque black. So now that I'm finished painting this lure, it's time to put a waterproofing on it. And I wanted to take a second here to talk to you a little bit about my mindset behind the waterproofing for this particular lure. As you know, ordinarily what I would do is waterproof the wood, then paint it, and then put a clear coat on it. And that would protect the lure from wear and tear of fishing with it. However, this is obviously a different type of lure. It's not meant for heavy use. It's not meant for day in and day out great white shark fishing, because who does that? Instead, I'm just going to go with a thin outer waterproofing to protect this lure until that initial bite. Because the truth is, once this thing gets bit, it's going to go through whatever waterproofing, whatever clear coat I put on this thing. There's nothing in this world I can put on this that would protect it from a shark bite like that. So I've decided to put several layers of this polyurethane spray, and what that will do is it will protect the lure at least until it gets bit. And that's all I needed to do. The other thing about a thick clear coat is that it will fill in all of this detail that I've got in there, and it gives it an unrealistic look in the end. And so, since this is mostly a display piece, really, I'm going to put the thin spray on there so that I can maintain that detail, maintain that look. So I'm going to put a few coats on here, and then it'll be time to install the lip and the flippers. Our urethane gave these eyes a little bit of a shine, but I think I'm going to go for just a little bit more. I've mixed up some True Coat epoxy, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that on the eyes. And what that does is it kind of floats that eye out. You can see it looks a little bit rounder and a little bit more realistic versus the carved eye. As you may recall, inside the lip slot there's a bump in the middle, and that's where the chain is running through. So what I did is I went on ahead and I cut out a notch the same size in my polycarbonate here. And then you can see when I slide this over, I've marked on both sides where the edge of the lure is, and I've also marked front and back so that I can keep track of that. And I also added a mark on the top on both sides so that I know where to taper my lip to. Let's grab a final measurement here. 30.5 inches in overall length. £11.9. We'll call it 12. 12 pounds. You can now get your own official Zentex merchandise if you want to support the channel and look good doing it. Just click on the store tab or on the link in the description. If you like the content I'm putting out, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up so I can make more of the stuff you want to see. Also, feel free to leave a comment. I welcome your feedback and appreciate all of your support. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.